with me for a look at today in history. A little bit of a look back is correspondent Danny Swibel. Good evening, Danny.
Thanks for having me.
So we're talking Iraq today, and it's really fitting because looking at what's happening today, it's always about what happened before that and before that and before that. So
that's correct. You know, we always talk about the wars, the Gulf War, which ended 1991 on this date. And we talk about 2003 and on. We never talk about one of the most brutal decades in Iraqi history, and that's in those years in between the two wars, when a reported 500,000 children died due to perhaps Iraqi sanctions that were put on from the international community.
That's a number hard to imagine.
It's crazy. The Western world wanted to stop Saddam in his tracks. George Bush Sr. did not want to go in and do what his son would later do in 2003. So a way to keep Saddam at bay was to pass these sanctions. And these sanctions end up having the reverse effect. Instead of actually hurting the regime, hurting Saddam and his Ba'athist party, they actually made a lot of them rich. The black market, they were able to still operate and live their lives in luxury while the rest of the society went on without food, without medicine. And it lasted like this for the entire time until sanctions were relieved in 2003 upon the Iraq War.
So this was the non-war period.
This is the non-war period, and so in this time, you know, we want to understand, looking back in history, why do we have elements of
what does it mean
extremism?
for today, exactly?
See, it's funny because there's so many things we can draw from this. I mean, after that war, just how we look at Iraq, how we understand the different communities. I failed to mention that this was a time where George Bush Sr. had said to the Shiite, he said,
and there was a big rebellion of the Shiite at this time that Saddam didn't accept.
Saddam didn't accept, and the thing is, the Shiites felt that the U.S. had abandoned them. They didn't really push forward in that. So Saddam mowed down the Shiites and the Kurds. And this would help explain why, post-2003, the U.S. wasn't able to get the Shiites on their side to help them fight against the Sunnis
because
and against
they had abandoned them.
They had abandoned them
previously.
In the most
extreme sense before.
So when we even look at some people like ISIS, people taking over large swaths of Iraq, we have to ask ourselves, what is some of the cause of this? When you think of they haven't had any support, when I say that they, I mean the Iraqi people in general, haven't had this consistent support from the West. They don't know who to trust in terms of the regime, because if it wasn't the Sunnis of the Saddam age, now we're talking about the Shiites who don't really support the Sunnis. So when we say, why are people extreme in the region, maybe we have to ask ourselves, what hasn't worked? What infrastructure has not been there for decades upon decades?
It's very fitting. I'm very glad you came with us today, because we started the show speaking about IS today in Syria and Iraq and the regional picture, and a lot about the Western countries just maybe starting to understand why all of this happened. So a great lesson from you on part of that. Danny Swibel, thanks very much.
Thanks for having me, Marie.
We're going out for a 2-minute break, and we'll be back with the Daily Debate, Israel Elections 2015. Just a little while left until the vote. Stay with us.